Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about the critical role of gas in energizing Africa at the African Energy Indaba. I use the term gas to mean both natural gas widely available in Africa, but also hydrogen one day to be produced in Africa. But let me start with a personal story. I currently mentor young women leaders in energy in Africa from Ghana, from Nigeria, from the Cameroon, from Uganda, Kenya, and from South Africa. Last week, one from Cameroon texted me to say, Andy, we can't discuss my plans for a small hydroelectric plant and a solar business because my house has been without electricity for 2 days. Such is the tragedy of energy and electricity in Africa, but also such is the hope of young, ambitious African leaders. Also last week, another one told me with excitement in her voice about leading an IRENA Europe-Africa workshop on renewables in Africa. And a third one is busy with opportunities to bring more Mozambican gas to South Africa. Energy is absolutely key to achieving 9 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals as they apply to Africa. No poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, affordable clean energy, which is specifically included for Africa and for Asia, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, sustainable communities and cities, and also, importantly, climate action against climate risk. And when we look at the African Development Bank, President Adesina is very clear that to light up and power Africa, to feed Africa, to industrialize Africa, to integrate Africa through roads and other infrastructures such as energy and to improve the quality of life, it also requires clean energy to achieve those objectives. But the best way to, for a moment, take stock on African energy is to look at the International Energy Agency's so-called Sankey diagram that looks at where Africa's energy is produced, but also where it is used. And what we see on screen is the energy balance for Africa, with on the left-hand side, the production of energy, and the width of every bar is an indication of the quantity. And we see clearly Africa's oil production, Africa's coal production, Africa's gas production, Africa's production of wood, and the production of geothermal energy, renewable energy, hydro and nuclear, quite small by comparison to the rest. And on the right-hand side, we see the 3 main uses of energy in Africa: for industry, including mining and agriculture, for transport, and for buildings, including homes and offices. And we see quite clearly from the thickness of the green line that we have an African population which is needing energy and is burning trees to do so. We see quite clearly from the line to the bottom, which is exports of energy from Africa, that Africa is exporting as much oil and gas and coal as we consume. And when we look at the power sector, we see quite clearly that in the north, gas is the major source of power, and in the south, it is coal-fired power generation. And we see that renewables are still quite small, even if we include hydro, even if we were to include nuclear, but that solar brings great convenience across the African continent today. And last but not least, we see that petrol and diesel and jet fuel for the 50 million vehicles and planes in Africa need to be replaced in time by electric vehicles and possibly green hydrogen. Turning for a moment to Africa's population that need to be energized by gas and other energy sources, our population is currently 1.3 billion. Demographers and the International Energy Agency expect that to be 2 billion by 2040, exceeding both China and India. Our continent has the world's youngest and fastest growing population. And on screen, we can see the 14 cities that by 2040 will each have a population of more than 10 million, with Lagos expected to have a population of close to 40 million, making it the largest city by population in the world. And whether our population is rural or in these 14 megacities, they need energy for cooking, for lighting, for heating, for cooling, for communication, and for transport. African agriculture produces maize and sorghum and millet and wheat and teff and beans and rice and cocoa and vegetables and fruit and dairy products and meat, mainly for our domestic consumption. Agriculture needs energy for transportation, for cold storage, for processing, for water pumping, for irrigation, for keeping livestock. But our farmers struggle with the unavailability and unreliability of electricity, and production per hectare is often only 1/5 of what is possible. As far as industry is concerned, mining and beneficiation of our ores is our most important industry and the only one in which we have a global competitive position. Africa hosts 30% of world mineral reserves. These are mined by companies like Anglo American and Ashanti Gold and BHP and Glencore and Rio Tinto and Valley and Barrick and Freeport and Newmont and Teck and Sibanye-Stillwater and De Beers. And vast deposits still remain untouched. Supplying emerging markets in future will be critically important. And significantly, about 1,000 projects are in development. And mining is, for our continent, a critical foundation industry because it plays an important role in job creation, in capacity building, in the building of railway lines and roads and energy and water infrastructure, in sanitation, and as a market for farming. And African countries earn very valuable foreign exchange from mineral exports, but available and reliable and competitive and clean energy supply is absolutely key to its success. Having said all that, let's have a look at the African gas industry. And I'm going to go anti-clockwise around Africa to take stock of where the gas industry in Africa is, starting in Algeria, because Algeria is the largest LNG and natural gas pipeline exporter, mainly to Europe. And from space and looking down at Algeria, we can see the 3 pipelines running from Algeria through Morocco into Spain, directly into Spain, and via Tunisia into Italy. We can also very clearly see the 2 big LNG plants at Skikda and Azou in the country that have supplied Europe with LNG for a very long period. Continuing around the coast in Senegal and Mauritania, both BP and Cosmos on the border in the offshore are busy with some the development plans for some very exciting gas projects. I move to the Ivory Coast and the Azito natural gas power plant, which we see below us from space. And in the Ivory Coast, the Azito plant generates electricity using natural gas supplied from the country's offshore gas fields. It's about 460 megawatts and is run and developed proudly by Globelec. We move on to Ghana, where we're about to see the commissioning of the first LNG import terminal in Africa at Tema. And looking down at Tema, at the harbor in Tema, we see the fantastic achievement of a future first LNG cargo to be landed. And I salute the example that Ghana is setting. And the combined cooperation between the Ghanaian National Petroleum Company, Shell and Rosneft to supply the LNG, the constructors of the Torman floating storage and regasification unit, and probably in future car power ship, will stand Ghana in good stead. We continue along the African coast to Nigeria, which is famous for its LNG exports, and the West African pipeline that starts in Nigeria, and look down at from space at Nigeria LNG, where the 7th train is currently under construction through the joint efforts of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company and Shell and Total and Eni. And we see Bonny Island below us. I move on to Equatorial Guinea. And Equatorial Guinea is also an LNG exporter, as we can see in the square from space below us. and the LNG plant at Malabo on Bioko Island already began in 2007 to export LNG into the Atlantic Basin and has a proud delivery record. Likewise, in Angola, is an LNG exporter, and below us we can see in northern Angola the Angola LNG project, the tanks, the ship berths, the ship loading, in fact, run by Chevron and Sonangol. And then we move to Southern Africa, and specifically South Africa. For quite some time now, there have been LNG import talks now, in fact, for probably 2 decades, at Saldanha, at Kucha, at Mossel Bay, where there's also the Moss gas plant, which is shutting down this year, and at Richards Bay. And after 20 years of attempts to bring LNG to South Africa, the 2,000 megawatt RFP for emergency power is possibly the last opportunity to bring LNG either on the back of diesel or of LPG into South Africa. But I'm delighted to see big names like Exxon and Shell and Total and NG and Car Powership featuring prominent in the bidding consortia to do so. Whilst that is happening here in Maputo at Matola, Total and Gigajoule are working very hard on the Matola RFSU that opens up so many options for either power supply or gas supply, and is now in advanced feed and permitting. I also pay tribute to the fact that Mozambique has been the largest supplier of gas to South Africa and one of the largest cross-border flows of gas on the African continent. And what we see below us here is Pande and Temane, where the gas feed from Mozambique to South Africa originates, and also where Globelec has recently took an FID on the Temane power plant. And then further up the coast, very close to the Tanzanian border, we now see the plant site in northern Mozambique, where a combination of Total and ENI and ExxonMobil are planning the future of the world-scale and world-class energy basin to be developed in the area. I'm delighted to see the health and scholarships, the health support, the scholarships and the local content that Total is undertaking to improve conditions for local citizens in northern Mozambique. Just across the border in Tanzania, there are plans for a land-based energy export project, and below us we see the offshore deepwater blocks that will supply the Tanzania gas and LNG project being developed by a combination of Shell and Equinor of Norway. In Kenya, a number of natural gas-fired power stations are in need of gas and sometimes have to run on fuel oil because of that. And below us, we see the Kenyerezi natural gas-fired power plant in Kenya. And then further up the coast, almost completing our journey, we get to Egypt, where there is a number of LNG export projects, plus a natural gas-fired power system, which combines perfectly with renewables. And below us, we see the Mediterranean Sea in the foreground, and we see the Burulis combined cycle power plant at 4,800 megawatts, the largest in Africa, a fantastic project for the Egyptian Electricity Company, integrating sun and wind and gas-fired power generation to make sure that the lights stay on in Egypt. And then in closing, just across the border from Egypt in Libya, Libya has been an exporter through the Green Stream pipeline to Europe of gas, and has also had an LNG project at Brega, which we see below us. But that plant now is no longer operating, having been one of the first LNG projects built in the world. So all in all, from the big picture of gas in Africa, what can we conclude from this picture about gas in Africa? With 40 countries having a coastal border And what pointers can I offer for the future? The first conclusion that I think is very clear is that Africa cannot be energized and industrialized on electricity from only sun and wind. It is going to require an additional energy source to make sure that Africa can grow. The second conclusion is natural gas is today already the most important source of electricity in Africa, and I expect it to continue to grow. Third conclusion is that Egypt is probably the best example for other countries in Africa of how natural gas can support the establishment of a renewable energy industry in the country using solar and wind to ensure that there's electricity reliability and continuity. The fourth conclusion is that Africa needs natural gas for power and for industry, but our continent is a warm continent. And there's no particular large-scale need for natural gas for space heating, quite unlike North America or Europe or Russia or China or Japan. As far as production of gas and export of gas is concerned, it is very clear that Africa exports almost as much natural gas as we consume, and that Mozambique, when it comes online in its full ambitious LNG export program, will tip the balance in favor of exports. And we can conclude that natural gas production and exports, if we look across the LNG and gas exporting countries, brought wealth and capacity building to exporting countries. Turning to the future, it is very clear to me that natural gas developments in Mozambique and also in Tanzania must develop both the East and the South and Southern African natural gas industries, gas on its doorstep. And looking at the overall situation in Africa must not have 7 LNG exporting countries and only 1 LNG import terminal. We need to make progress. Staying with the future, floating storage and regasification, which can be constructed at low cost somewhere else in the world and could be redeployed, is the best way to bring LNG to Africa. And turning to the longer term future, Africa has some of the best solar conditions, which we can see from the red on the left, and also very good wind, as we can see from the red on the coast, on the African East Coast, the African Northwest Coast, and the Southern African coast. And in future, all that renewable energy could also help Africa to be a green hydrogen producer, expanding the role of gas in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and speak to you, the opportunity to speak to you about the critical role of gas in energizing Africa today, but also in future.